tell us the story of how you came across playing bluegrass, because as I understand it, you were studying classical guitar originally. Is that right?
Originally, I was a rock and roll kid. I
Okay.
got into guitar when I was in high school and had a classic rock band in high school called Bordertown Highway. And we had original songs, but we also did Bob Dylan, Steve Miller, The Byrds, Tom Petty. That's the kind of stuff we were into. And then I became a Deadhead and got way into the Grateful Dead and managed to, catch the tail end of that era between about 93 and 95 and went to a bunch of Grateful Dead shows. And then at that time, I was in college, and the only music major option at the community college that I was attending here in San Diego, Grossmont College, was a classical path. And I resisted. I'm like, I don't really want to play classical guitar. I'm not that into that style. But we have an amazing mentor here in town called Fred Benedetti. Fred Benedetti was the chair of the classical guitar program at Grossmont College and at San Diego State, and just a great guy, an amazing teacher, amazing professor, world-class player. And I thought, well, I can study with Fred, and this is costing me next to nothing. Back then, the community college tuition was $13 a unit.
Oh man.
Goodness
And
gracious.
yeah, so I just thought, I was already teaching guitar lessons at a local music store, teaching kids how to play like Green Day and stuff they were into it in those days, in the mid 90s, Green
Oh,
Day
wow.
and Nirvana. Thank God this wasn't in the heavy metal era because I didn't know that style very well. But teaching kids how to play, Green Day songs and Nirvana and things like that was easy enough. And so I kind of reluctantly jumped on the classical path. But once I got into it, it didn't take long to realize, like, whoa, this is making me a much better guitarist. And the classical method is what I latched onto. These days, people can access YouTube and find,
Yeah.
all these lessons on all these styles for free right there. Back then, if I wanted to learn a song, I had to go find the CD that had the song on it and pay $15 for it just to get that one song. You understand this language.
Yeah.
And these days, there's resources are just plentiful for young players wanting to learn. But here I am, on this classical path, and this was a tried and true method of stepping stones that are already there for you. All you got to do is learn this etude and then learn this piece, and then you learn these scales, and then you learn this etude and this piece. You have to put the time in, but the structure is already there. And I thought, whoa, this is kind of cool. And I actually do sort of enjoy this music now. So I went on that path and got really deep into it. And I was still playing gigs, and I was in San Diego at the time. So these gigs were the Electric Waste Band, the Grateful Dead cover band in town, who was still playing Monday nights at Winston's in Ocean Beach since 1989. And
Wow.
this earned me a place in the San Diego Music Hall of Fame. Just last
Wow.
Oh,
year,
cool.
the Electric Waste Band, who Bill Walton was an honorary member of this band
Nice.
on percussion, and they've been serving the community so diligently for so long that they were inducted into the San Diego Music Hall of Fame, and they included all the past members. So I became a San Diego Hall of Fame member, which really tickled me, and it
That's
was
great.
Sure.
special to be acknowledged in that way. And then there's reggae bands and funk bands. There was bluegrass happening around here, but not among the young people or at the venues. It was the San Diego Bluegrass Society was here, and that's how I learned to play, just going to their, every second Tuesday of the month, there was a jam at the Fuddruckers Burger Joint and an open mic and things like that, and a bunch of old timers players. And I was this hippie kid showing up who could play, but I didn't know that style at all. But that was how it started for me. And I was studying classical, so I was getting this guitar skill and this method of understanding how to learn something, how to excel at a style by breaking it down into its most basic components, as the classical method does. And then I transferred to CalArts, California Institute of the Arts, up north of LA in Valencia. And that is a very progressive liberal arts conservatory. And it broadened my musical spectrum in ways that I'm still working out. I mean, we got into Hindustani classical music, all this different world music, you know, drumming and dancing of Ghana, Javanese gamelan. Studied
Cool.
with amazing professors there, Miroslav Tadic, who was from Serbia and taught us flamenco and bossa nova and all of this Macedonian and Serbian folk music that all the guitar players would jam on these cool, like, you know, Balkan folk tunes, and got into free jazz and studied, you know, jazz with Charlie Hayden and Larry Coons and people like that at Cal Arts, and was just like, whoa, 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 this is so much going on. And I'm still on my classical path and studying that. And there was a couple of students there, and I got bitten by the bluegrass bug along the way, because my dad always had, you know, we grew up with Ricky Skaggs and Judds and Emmylou Harris albums in the 80s and 90s, and that sound was always there. And my dad and I would listen to every Sunday on KSON radio was the bluegrass show, Wayne Rice's bluegrass show, which was you know, an amazing historic show, had been running for, you know, 30 plus years, and we would listen to that on Sundays. And then, you know, being a deadhead, I'm listening to the Grateful Dead hour one night, and on comes, you know, Old and in the Way doing Uncle Pen, and I'm like, huh, this is bluegrass, Bill Monroe, and this is Jerry Garcia playing banjo on this Bill Monroe. It all kind of hit me. I'm like, I'm familiar with this sound. I know this sound. This is a really cool sound. And what I love about it is it takes me outside. It takes me to the places I want to be. It takes me to the mountaintop, you know, where
Yeah.
jazz takes me to a lounge, or in those days, the jazz took me to the classroom, which is not how you want to approach playing jazz, but that's how it happened at my college. And so all of this stuff started triangulating, and I realized, you know, if I'm going to excel at some type of musical style, it's going to give me an advantage to do something I'm culturally connected to. I'm not going to be this great flamenco, Hindustani, you know, East European musician. Those are great styles to gain little tricks and tools and insight from. But I thought, you know, how do I really want to do this classical thing? Do I want to be a classical recital guitarist? It seems as if there's a lot of people doing this. There's a lot of competition. This is really hard style. It's hours and hours of practice a day. And a couple of friends at Cal Arts had a little bit of experience with bluegrass. And my buddy Dan Marcus, who was another guitar major, he said, Tyler, go out and buy Tony Rice Manzanita. And I went out and I bought Tony Rice Manzanita. And from the first lick of that album, I knew what I want. I'm like, whoa, this is bluegrass guitar, but played on a classical level. Whoa, what a revelation. And at that same time, you know, this was old, this was 70s, you know, a recording of Tony Rice. But at that time, Alison Krauss and Union Station was big. We were on the cusp of Oh Brother. It hadn't quite happened yet when I was in school. But Nickel Creek was happening, Alison Krauss and Union Station, all of the evolution of this new acoustic style that Tony Rice, Daryl Anger, Mike Marshall, and all these players, and then of course Newgrass from Sam Bush and all that. This had evolved to a point, in dog music with David Grisman, and I started listening to all this music, and I thought, wow, I can take all of my classical training and apply it to this. Why don't we take this path? And then I started going to bluegrass festivals and realizing how much fun it was. It was a community. It's like people hang out and jam all night, and they make connections, and there's all these young players who do this. And I thought, wow, this is the path I'm going to take. So, you know, I kept up on my classical studies a little bit, but what I did was I arranged that stepping stone classical method and started breaking down the flatpicking style and checking out players like Tony Rice, like David Greer, you know, Clarence White, Brian Sutton, Norman Blake, and Russ Barenberg. Those were kind of the players I was checking out at that time. And of course, Doc Watson. And I thought, you know, these classical studies, I can just apply them to learning this style. So I was able to pick it up pretty quickly. And, you know, within a couple of years, I moved to Nashville and started hanging out with all these people and jamming with them. And that was like earning a master's degree, just living in Nashville for those 7 years that I did. So that's kind of how it all happened. And today that has served me quite well, because in my teaching method, I'm very, very practical, and I arrange this stepping stone method like the classical method, but
Nice.
with this expertise of flat picking and bluegrass style. So that's another thing that I feel like I can offer on a much higher level from having taken that classical road as far as I did.